If we could have Representative Masters carried on the floor. Thank you very much. I'd like now to open the public hearing on House Bill 2950. Jan, could you summarize, please?
It's sitting here in this neighborhood.
Committee members, this is a bill that allows eligible employees to take family leave for up to 2 weeks to deal with the death of a family member. Requires leave to be counted towards the total period of authorized family leave, and there are no amendments before you.
Thank you. Representative Kenny Geyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Alyssa Kenny Geyer, and I represent House District 46, which includes parts of Southeast and Northeast Portland. I'm here today, and I'm sorry that your member, Representative Widener, who is a co-chief sponsor, is not on your committee today, because otherwise he would be here with me. This bill is basically a very simple bill. It adds 2 weeks to the definition of the Oregon Family Leave Act, which currently includes 12 weeks of unpaid leave for employees that work for organizations that are 25 employees or more. Currently, the law allows it to take care of sick family members who are direct family members, or the birth or adoption of a child or a foster child, circumstances like that. So this would expand the definition of what the OFLA would allow, and include when the death of an immediate family member has happened, that you could take 2 weeks as part of that 12 weeks. It's not in addition to the 12 weeks. And this is really important because sometimes you may have somebody who, for instance, you might be going down to California to take care of a parent, and the parent perhaps passes away at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and if you're not back at work the next day, you could possibly lose your job. So it just doesn't make sense at all. So this is compassionate. When people have just lost a family member, they're going to be in grief. If it's an immediate case, then they may have to make immediate arrangements. Who takes the children to child care? If it's a spouse, so it could be a spouse, it could be children, it could be parents or parents-in-law. And you know, it's unpaid, and for businesses, they're not going to get the kind of productivity out of their employees when someone is in such extreme grief. So this is compassionate. It's really important that we include this, and I don't want to take too much time because I know you've got a really busy hearing today, and there are a number of people that want to testify for this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Representative Alyssa Kenny Geyer? Thank you.
Quick question, just because it dawned on me. I'm very supportive. If an employer offers their family leave paid, as some employers voluntarily do, would this then be expected to be paid? And you may not know the answer, so this is just kind of a thought. Would this expected to be, paid also if their in general family leave policy is that they do offer paid leave?
So I don't know the answer to that, but thank you, because that reminds me to say that we do have Elizabeth Kushwa from BOLI is here to answer any kind of technical questions, and Andrea Peluso from Family Forward Oregon. Neither of them are signed up to testify, but are here if you'd like to bring them up and ask any technical questions.
Okay. Why don't we
wait to the end, perhaps?
Wait and to get that information before the end of the hearing.
Because other people may have the answer to that too.
If you could alert Elizabeth, because I know that she's in the overflow room.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what we'll do is we've got about four. We'll hear some from
Robin Zimmerman.
Yeah, is it Robin Zimmerman, Jenna, and Christine Mulholland? And we'll go to those guys. Okay. And if you have written testimony, if you could just briefly summarize what it is, because we do go over that testimony. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming today.
My name is Robin Zimmerman. Oh, thank you, Chairman Doherty and members of the committee.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Zimmerman. I live in Lafayette, Oregon. I'm here supporting House Bill 2950. Do I continue, or does everyone go on?
You can just continue if you'd like to, sir.
I lost my wife in May 3rd of 2008 that memory is absolutely clear with me. The days after are nothing but a fog. I didn't feed my daughter unless people happened to bring food, had no concept of what was going on. Went through the steps of preparing the memorial with help from family and friends and my church family. Without that help, it wouldn't have happened. During the time before that, my wife went through a year of treatments, and they were absolutely hellish. Sitting beside her and watching her end her life, I knew it was a relief, I knew it was a blessing, but it didn't change how it affected me. So for the next few days, it was just a blur. After that, after I started to clear my head, I took a proactive approach. I had to set up the household. I looked at what it did to me and was concerned about what it did to my 12-year-old daughter. I was set out learning as much as I could about grief and what I would do with her. So we've done well over the last 5 years. She's a junior in high school, plans on going to college, wants to take a nursing degree. And after returning to work, I was taken care of by my coworkers more. So my work was very good. They gave me the time off, but I really didn't have the funds to support it. My coworkers collected, gave me a collection of about $1,000 to fund my 2 weeks I did manage to pull it off to prepare before it. If I'd gone back to work, I would have been there physically, but I would have been absent mentally. I would have been, frankly, a liability and an unsafe person to be working in a large manufacturing plant like I am. So what I'm asking is that you consider with this bill what you have or would do if you lost a loved one. How much time would you think you would need? And think, as far as your family, how would you like them and what would you like available for them if you were to pass away yourself? So allowing this FMLA approximately 10 working days is a necessity and should become the norm as opposed to the 3-day norm we see now.
Okay. If you could summarize.
Yeah,
please.
and look, okay, and I think that's it. I just want to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you for coming here and expressing your views with us. Next.
Thank you, Chairman Doherty and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jenna Passalacqua, and I'm also here in support of the bill. My mother was Cindy Ewell, and she was killed at Clackamas Town Center in December. Anyways, I was shocked that, thanks, I was shocked that some people might not be able to take 2 weeks of unpaid leave off of work when something like this happens. I was fortunate enough to work for an employer that was really great. I took 6 weeks time off, which was paid, and I was fortunate to have that. And that still wasn't enough time, in all honesty. But yeah, 2 weeks after something like this happens, there's no way. There's no way that I could have gone back to work the next day. So, in summary, yeah, this is something that needs to happen. It's 2 weeks, which is nothing, and it's unpaid leave.
Thank you for bringing your story to us. Thank you.
For the record, I'm Dr. Christine Monholland of Kaiser Permanente Hospice. I've been in that position for a decade. Chairwoman Doherty and Vice Chair Kennemer and members of the committee. Cindy Ewell was also my colleague of a decade. I just want to acknowledge that. And I very much appreciate her daughter's presence here today to share with you her story. At Kaiser Hospice, we serve about 1,100. We have about 1,100 deaths a year. And in that capacity, over the course of a decade, I've worked with countless families who've attempted to adjust to the close loss of somebody they love. The process of adjustment after a significant loss, which some of you may know personally, is generally measured in months and sometimes years, but certainly not in days. In addition to the death of Cindy, other clients of mine, I just want to bring their stories into the room so that we know who this bill is really targeted at. My client Heidi, who's 36, her 40-year-old husband died of leukemia 18 months after her dad was killed in an accident. Heidi is a school teacher. My client Michael, 42, whose wife died of breast cancer, leaving behind an 8-year-old daughter. Michael works for an IT company. My client Paula, who's 58, her husband died 6 weeks after being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Paula works as a waitress. And Rachel and Doug, a married couple in their 40s, whose 19-year-old son died of a brain tumor. Rachel works in accounting and Doug in law enforcement. I want to say, from the perspective of a bereavement professional, that the loss of a loved one is commonly recognized as one of the most stressful life events you can experience. Acute grief is debilitating on every level of functioning: emotional, cognitive, behavioral, social, and physical, uncontrolled anxiety and sadness, poor concentration and attention, cloudy thinking, greatly impaired sleep, disrupted appetite and fatigue are all common, particularly in the earliest days of loss. These normal symptoms of grief make performing our jobs very difficult, and my clients will often tell me of their difficulty managing their emotions or being able to focus effectively in their jobs. These symptoms can actually make work dangerous, as Robin already testified, if you work in a capacity where you operate machinery or equipment or you have to care for or protect others. My clients who are nurses, TriMet drivers, and police officers come to mind. I'd like to also mention that handling practical matters takes time. Whether you're arranging or attending a funeral or memorial, changing the billing on accounts, managing the estate, arranging child or elder care, clients are generally overwhelmed with the scope of these details, and they need time to attend to them, especially if travel might be required. There's added hardship, as Jenna has already spoken to. If the loss is sudden or violent, you're then dealing with the presence of trauma, which compounds the grief. And certainly individuals in these circumstances are very ill prepared to return to work immediately. You may hear today from those who oppose this measure that this bill presents a hardship to those in the business community.
Dr. Mulholland, we have your written testimony.
Oh,
if
sorry.
You could summarize
okay.
Your points briefly, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I guess all I wanted to say about that is no additional leave is added. The time is unpaid. Not all will access the 2 weeks because they can't afford the loss of income or their leave is already exhausted. So in summary, since we grant people 12 weeks to take care of a dying person, I believe it is the sensible, proactive, humane approach to grant those same individuals 2 weeks of time off from work to begin to grieve the loss of their loved one. I appreciate very much your listening today during a very busy day and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the panel? Representative Fagan.
Just a quick comment. First of all, I'm very sorry for all of your loss, and in particular to Jenna. I'm very supportive. I lost my dad when I was about your age 7 years ago next month, and I was in a high-pressure kind of sales job, and with, high quotas you had to meet every month, and I took a week off after he passed away to travel to the Dalles, attend the funeral, and deal with the family details, and I was, then went back to work. Obviously had not a great month in sales, and I was terminated. I actually, in the termination conversation, decided to quit instead because I was planning on attending law school a couple months later anyway. But, in part, because my sales didn't meet the goal they were supposed to meet the month that my dad died very suddenly. So I'm very supportive, and again, sorry for all of your loss.
Thank you, Representative Fagan. Any other questions? Okay, and as I say, with brevity, please.
I just wanted to comment that I also lost a job one time because I took a few days off to go help my wife with her mother while she was dying, and 3 days after I left, she died. I went back to work the following week, and I didn't have a job. because I left. So I'm very supportive of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Did you ask anything?
Just one bit. Thank you for coming to share. I think most of us have had some losses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next panel, Jen Meekum, Lori Satsfield, and J.L. Wilson.
Madam Chair, just a question I want to throw out there. Would some notice be required? I mean, you don't just not show up for a couple days. I mean, you know, some notification. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know.
I've not read the bill to that specific.
The bill as written is...
But if it's FMLA,
falls
the other
under,
things.
falls under FMLA. So it would have to be a qualified absence, so it would have to be approved if in the event of an illness, just like if you were to get hit by a car or something and you couldn't...
Notification.
You know, just like FMLA, there's procedures for an emergency provision. But yeah, it falls just under FMLA.
Okay, thank
Chair
you.
Doherty, members of the committee, Lori Sattenspiel for the Oregon School Boards. Cut back to follow. I'm so sorry for loss.
I'm sorry.
You know, it's.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to get on the record. I have the same concerns that Representative Fagan shared about the bill. If paid leave is already involved, how does this impact what we've already bargained in our contracts? And you know, it was heartening, I guess, to hear that the employers do their very best to try to work with these case by case basis. And I guess a little bit of concern is a broad policy for. Something that I know Representative Holvey mentioned, that his employer maybe not quite so helpful in the situation, but for the folks who sat up here, you know, the employers were trying to do the best they could, and that's basically all I want to answer any questions. But we've got bereavement and 2 weeks paid in our contracts.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Wilson.
Yeah. Chair Doherty and members, for the record, J.L. Wilson representing Associated Oregon Industry. I want to make it clear that AOI does not oppose bereavement leave. In fact, we wouldn't even oppose bereavement leave as part of the OFLA statute. We do oppose 2950 as written as an isolated bill. The reason that is the case is our contention is you need to look at the OFLA law in its totality. And I would hope that an outcome that maybe this bill precipitates is that we look at the law and we can include bereavement leave. But I think you need to look at the law in context of how Oregon's family leave law relates to other states. Our leave laws are already the most generous in the country. By far, there is no peer. We offer the most leave already. We offer the most leave for the most conditions. We offer the most leave down to the smallest companies. Oregon really has no peer as it relates to our family leave law. I just wanted to set some context for you because you probably won't get this anywhere else, but I think you need to understand the context. Oregon is one of only 12 states with a state family leave law, okay? Not many states do this on their own. Our family leave law applies to the smallest companies. Only 4 states have leave laws that apply to small business. Most leave laws actually apply their leave laws to big business as an overlay on top of the federal law. Oregon has gone the other direction. We apply it to small companies. Oregon has the lowest threshold for entry into our leave law to qualify for OFLA. You essentially need to be a part-time worker for 6 months in order to qualify. Most every other state, in fact, 45 or 46 require at least full-time employment over the course of a year. Oregon has no peer as it relates to qualifying leaves. 12 weeks each calendar year for parental leave, serious health leave, pregnancy, disability leave, and sick child leave. We have more qualifying leaves than any other state. You see on my written testimony, only California has something comparable. No other state has a broader definition of family that qualifies under this bill, and I won't go further into that because it's in my written testimony. Oregon also has other leaves that run concurrently with our family leave law that no other state has, including 12 weeks of sick child leave, which requires no medical verification. We've decoupled our leave laws from our workers' comp statutes, so that doubles leave effectively. We're one of a handful of states that does not allow reinstatement to equivalent positions. You have to have reinstatement to your exact job. You see at the end of my written testimony a number of things that employers would like to get out of the system, including consistency with federal law and federal regulation on a number of things that do not include some of the benchmark, hallmark things of our system that I just included. I do not pretend that we're not going to apply our family leave law to small business or get rid of any other provision that we have. I don't make that argument. What I do say is I would ask that there be some consideration for the regulations that are involved in the Oregon law that make us wholly inconsistent and wholly out of step with federal regulation. They make this law so hard to administer. And we would support a bereavement leave in context of reshaping that system, and we would be glad to include bereavement. But what has happened is we've piled on leave on top of leave to create a system that basically no other state has. We would like to simplify the system, make it more conducive to the federal law, and I hope that that could be an outcome of this bill and this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair Doherty and members of the committee, my name is Jan Meekums, State Director for National Federation of Independent Business in Oregon. I just don't want to take up a lot of your valuable time this morning. This is a very important issue. We've already heard some very compelling stories. But speaking for our 7,500 small business members throughout the state, the bill as written could create quite a hardship, and we do feel that our members are very sensitive to personal loss of the nature that we've been discussing today, and that it should be an employee-employer issue. And as was stated earlier, one of the people that spoke this morning had a tremendous loss, was allowed 6 weeks. Understand it wasn't enough. It's never enough when you have a loss such as that. But that is typical of our members. They are sensitive. They work it out with their employee. And the mandated nature of this, the extent of this bill, would be very difficult. And as written, we would oppose it and concur with the statements that have been made by JL and AOI today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Representative Fagan.
Mr. Wilson, if I heard you correctly, you said you would support this bill as an addition to OFLA, but not as a standalone bill. Did I hear you correctly?
Thank you, Chair Doherty and Representative Fagan. My point in my statement was we would not support it as a standalone bill because it's an addition to OFLA that we currently does not exist. My point, Representative Fagan, was that I would hope that this bill could initiate a discussion about how we reform OFLA, and we can include bereavement in as part of that reformation. I would not oppose that. What I'm saying is there has to be some way to get this law back into conformance with federal law on a number of key pieces. Our OFLA law is routinely cited as the biggest HR burden of the companies that we represent, and companies that do business in multiple states routinely cite our OFLA law as the most burdensome of all the states they do business. So I would like to be able to fold bereavement law into a reform of OFLA, yes.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair. Follow up.
Representative Fagan.
Okay, I do believe earlier you said you would support it as folded into OFLA, and with respect, I'm curious if you've read the bill, because it's not a standalone bill. It just includes in OFLA, in addition to caring for someone who's sick, it's amending OFLA to add a subpart E that says instead of just to care for a child or sickness, to deal with the death of a family member. So it's not a standalone bill. It's not any leave in addition to OFLA. It's still a total of 12 weeks. If 10 weeks of those are someone suffering from cancer, and the additional 2 weeks are someone dying of cancer, they're all covered. So it's not a standalone bill. So I could interpret your testimony as to say that you could support this bill.
Thank you, Chair Doherty and Representative Fagan. It's a qualifying leave that does not exist in statute today. So it's essentially an opportunity for 2 weeks that does not exist in statute today. So that's why I believe it's a standalone bill. We might have a different interpretation of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the last panel, Christina Stevenson and Rex Haynes. Okay, and you can go ahead and start.
Chair Doherty, members of the committee, my name is Christina Stevenson. I'm from Portland, and I support this bill. I submitted my written testimony already. You'll know it from the picture of my father. Today is 7 months since he passed away. Battled colon cancer for about 5 years, and I was able to take off a couple of weeks under OFLA. But you're always weighing your options. You know, should I take it now or wait until things get worse? You know, you never know. And even the very last day, the very last hospital stay, we had no idea it was going to be his last. He went in on a Saturday, and then, you know, even that Monday, he was still dancing for the nurses and telling jokes. And I told my mom I wanted to stay in the hospital with him, and she was worried that I would lose my job because I'd been taking so much leave. And I said, no, it's protected. But what I didn't realize that until a few months ago was that after he died that Wednesday night, it wasn't going to be protected anymore if I didn't go back on Thursday. And it's hard to really express how life-changing that experience is of watching your father take his last breath. I mean, I can't even imagine how I could have gone back to work that next day. And like some of the people have talked today, I was lucky I had an understanding employer who didn't fire me, but I don't want to base it on luck. I don't want to we want to set the minimum standards of acceptable conduct, because sometimes people lose sight of what's important in these situations. This will just be the minimum standard. And I just also wanted to say that, you know, I love my work. I'm a diligent employee, and I worked at the time for a company that was extremely affected by the financial crisis, and it was difficult to take off this time. But we don't get a choice when this will happen to us. So when this bill came up in 2011, I saw that when it went through the Senate committee, they took out protected leave for counseling and that's currently in this version of the bill. But when you all talk about it, I would encourage you to retain the counseling provision, because that's an important component of processing grief. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Rex?
Chair Doherty, Vice Chair Kennemer, members of the committee, my name is Rex Haynes, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon's Public Policy Committee. I'm here today to testify in support of the bill. EMO is a statewide organization, as you may know, of religious denominations, congregations, community-based cooperative ministries representing hundreds of Oregonians in every rural and urban community. Obviously, our testimony emanates from our shared religious values that affirm the value of love, respect for life, and the dignity of every human being. Our organization includes clergy and other religious leaders who counsel those who are suffering from loss and are intimately aware that taking time apart is a crucial part of a process toward healing. Whether the death was sudden or unanticipated, acknowledging the full reality of the loss may take weeks, months, even years. The circumstances requiring the surrounding death, as we've heard here today, often leave very little time. You can have to travel from one end of the country to the other, My testimony includes a few things like that. I would just say that we all have, I think, our stories of family grief and bereavement. EMO supports House Bill 2950 because we believe that supporting families in the time of need and respecting the dignity of those grieving is both moral as well as good public policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any quick questions of the panelists, please?
If I could, I'd just like to make a comment.
Okay, please.
Today has been a particularly difficult day for me. I think we all have our stories. Today is the birthday of my first wife. And we lived through the most traumatic time of my life for 8.5 years when she battled with breast cancer that had metastasized. Her courage was amazing. It makes this kind of bill difficult because tomorrow night my 2 sons and I will go out to dinner and we'll talk about her. It's kind of an annual thing we do. Should have been tonight, but one's out of town. And I don't know. You know, as a psychologist, I worked with a lot of people about grief. And it's tough to manage, and I don't think it works in time constraints very well. And it comes and goes. Most of the days I'm pretty good. In fact, most of the time I'm upbeat because she was an upbeat, loving, wonderful person. But it's hard to understand how these terrible things happen in our lives and why. You know, it always seems to me bad things ought to happen to bad people, not to great people, but that's not the way it is. So I just felt like I needed to say I don't know how we work a grief situation out because people need different times. It hits at different times, and frankly, in certain ways, it never goes away. And I guess I also remember a statement early in my career when I was talking about how difficult these things were and how bitter circumstances could be, and a friend of mine comforted me with words I've always cherished. She said, think what kind of person you'd be if these things didn't hurt. And I found that to be a great comfort, and wish you healing, and all of us, we all need lots of healing to get through life. Sorry.
Representative. Okay, any other questions? Okay, that concludes the list, so I close the that's everybody. So I close the work session on House Bill 2950. Oh, excuse me.